Have you ever seen Maldini and Baresi fear for their lives? Let me introduce you to Gabriel Batistuta, the man who had them chasing shadows. Yes, we've rebranded his nickname because his original one sounds mental in 2024. But this is the guy who silenced Old Trafford with a trademark thunderbolt that used to have keepers frozen on the spot like they were stuck in quicksand. When guys talk about how fake Adriano's shooting was on PES 6, this guy was battering shots at the speed of light in real life. Batistuta is a lot more modern than some of the wartime ballers we've discussed so far. But for anyone still too young, he's basically what you'd get if Prime Falcao and Prime Cavani did the fusion dance from Dragon Ball Z. So grab your pen and paper, it's time to find out the story of a legend whose gunshot celebration became so iconic that the Fiorentina Ultras built a statue of him and then completely destroyed it after one fatal decision. As always, before the chaos, I like to start from the beginning. And unlike the other stories of struggle upbringings and a burning passion for the beautiful game the moment they came out the womb, Batistuta didn't really care much about football in his early years. It wasn't until Argentina won the 1978 World Cup that he became hooked. But it didn't take him long to catch up though, joining the Platense junior team before quickly being selected to play for the Reconquista team that won the provincial championship thanks to his brace in the final. Despite reservations about leaving home, the opportunity to have his education paid for by Newell's Old Boys and having a whole different kind of education under none other than Marcelo Bielsa made it easier for him to make the 460km journey south. Within one season in the first team, his physical and technical prowess was impossible to ignore, and he immediately made a step up to River Plate. Unfortunately, he was hampered by a coach who shoved him out wide and didn't really start him. Gabriel was limited to just 4 goals that season on the way to winning the Argentina Primera Division. In what will be a sign of things to come later on in his career, rather than cry on the bench, he just said, "Cool," and went over to their biggest rivals, Boca Juniors, where he'd immediately become top scorer and propelled him to a first place finish. His ability to fire missiles into the net from any distance got him a call up for the 1991 Copa America, and this is where everything would change. Batistuta would end up putting on a masterclass. After vicious strikes on Venezuela's head, crushing it on Chile and packing in Paraguay, he cemented his golden boot by barking it off on Brazil, their eternal rivals. Argentina won the tournament and suddenly everyone was queuing up for his signature, like guys used to queue up outside Tesco for the new FIFA before school in the mornings back in the day. Fiorentina eventually won the battle to acquire his services, and after a slow start, the love between himself and the fans grew exponentially. Free kicks, no problem, he'll lash it top corner. Any set of goal within 25 yards and he's pulling the trigger like the guards on Takeshi's castle hitting them cannonballs at the people trying to walk across that bridge. 13 goals in his first season was just the beginning. The quality of his goals was astonishing. He could do it comfortably with his left foot, he could do it comfortably with his right foot. However, this love story is not one that blossomed easily and without setbacks. Despite upping his tally to 16 goals the next season, a constant change of managers and a terrible defense saw them relegated to Serie B. And with the 1994 World Cup looming, Batistuta had some decisions to make. In the end, after a lot of persuasion, he was convinced to stay at the club to propel them back to the top division. He decided that he owed the Violas his loyalty after the faith they showed in him from day one. And it's fair to say it worked out pretty well for all parties concerned. With all the managerial changes, it was Ranieri who took charge that season in the Serie B, and Mr. Bark It Off turned that league into his playground, completely bullying rivals Pisa and basically anyone who tried step to them. His automatic shooting fired them back up to the top division at the first time of asking, and he now began smashing records upon his arrival back into the big leagues. This man stormed to a golden boot with 26 goals, and in doing so broke Ezio Pascuti's long-standing record, scoring in 11 games straight. Can I remind you, this is in the era of Maldini, Baresi and all the best defenders playing in the Serie A back then. This is the era in which George Weah, Baggio, Zola, Del Piero and even Hullet were battling it out to be the top scorer. Batistuta had zero interest in any of that dribbling malarkey, unlike some of the other classic players that we've spoken about in the past. He was just interested in one thing: goals. In fact, you could tell he had no love for looking after the ball, with the way he'd slap it off like the ball was his arch nemesis anytime it arrived at his feet. But as with all strikers, you want your goals to eventually lead to something. Batistuta's addiction for goals saw him finally pick up his first trophy the next season, grabbing a brace in the Coppa Italia final before adding more silverware as they defeated Milan in the Supercoppa Italiana. Naturally, spearheading Fiorentina to trophies drew attention from the whole world once again, but by this point he had fallen in love with the club and he enjoyed that underdog vibe. He said himself that one title of Fiorentina is worth 10 titles at Milan or Juventus. With his future certain, he was able to fully focus on his World Cup debut in 1994. And unsurprisingly, this brother scooped up a hat-trick in his opening game against Greece. Batistuta was cooking up something crazy, but unfortunately his teammate Maradona was cooking up something even crazier, and he was banned from the tournament after a failed drug test. This drama overshadowed their entire tournament, and despite Gabi's best effort scoring in the knockouts against Romania, Argentina could not block out the distractions, and they were sent packing in the round of 16. Returning home to Fiorentina saw him continue bagging goal after goal after goal. The fans loved him so much they even gave him a statue outside the stadium. But despite all the love, something was still missing. In the 1997-98 season, Gabriel scored 24 goals and he was ready to try and conquer the world stage once again. Just like last time, he was on fire during the 1998 World Cup, collecting another 5 goals in the tournament as they looked to go further in their previous embarrassing run. However, they were eliminated in the quarterfinals this time by Dennis Bergkamp's iconic last-minute winner for Netherlands. Batistuta was now reaching his 30s without any major trophy. The domestic cups were nice, but it became apparent that these would not be enough to fill the void and the hunger he had for winning. After almost a decade at Fiorentina, scoring 203 goals for the club, he finally made the difficult decision to leave and join Roma in search of that elusive league title. 35 million was the highest fee ever paid for a player over 30 at the time, but that was no consolation for the Viola Ultras, who decapitated his statue with immediate effect. Bear in mind, this statue had the words engraved on it: "Warrior never tamed, tough in the fight, loyal in the soul." So you can understand why they were a little bit salty, but it was about to get worse. He was a hit success at Roma, picking up right where he left off, scoring goal after goal, seemingly on a weekly basis. Defenders were getting dashed to the floor like it's nothing as he steamrolled his way through to more goals. He scored 20 goals that season, and perhaps the most impressive one was against, you guessed it, Fiorentina. He described his emotions that day as a conflict of interest, or there was a serious conflict between his foot and the ball, as he hit a bullet of a first-time volley from 30 yards out into the roof of the net. He was so overwhelmed that not only did he refuse to celebrate, but he actually ended up crying as his teammates surrounded him. He saluted his old fans both before and after the game in a bid to plead for their understanding, and it was clear to see that the Violas still held him in a very high regard deep down, despite the pain he caused. His tears quickly subsided though, as he did exactly what he set out to achieve, becoming a Serie A champion on the final day of the 2000-2001 season, scoring in a 3-1 win over Parma at the Stadio Olimpico. This was Roma's first title since 1983, and the fans were absolutely in awe of their new hero. Capello himself, the manager at the time, said that we signed Batistuta because we needed an important striker like him. A strong header, a goal-scoring man, a leader on the field and in the locker room. He was very important to win the title. And likewise, Batistuta himself said that he made the decision to leave and join Roma because he believed that it would be the team that would allow him to perform the best in his final years of his career. He said he was not there to be the king, but to just join the group. But what an impact he made. Now in his 30s, his form naturally started to decline as his body started to suffer more and more injuries. He went on an unsuccessful loan to Inter where he'd only bagged twice in 12 games. And the 2002 World Cup was far from fruitful too. He scored the winner against Nigeria, but it wasn't enough to stop them getting sent home in the group stages this time. At club level, his mission was complete though, and he left Italy for Qatar in 2003, joining Al Arabi in a deal worth around $8 million. Of course, playing in a much weaker league, Batistuta went on to go and bag 25 goals there, eclipsing the league's record of most goals scored in one season. After a couple years, he hung up his boots in 2005. Once he retired, he barely had anything to do with football anymore. As to him, it was his job that he loved doing. But his job was now done, and he received the forgiveness of the Fiorentina fans who now view him as their greatest ever player again. He did have interest in doing some coaching badges here and there, but ultimately it never came to fruition, and now he's actually living his life in Australia. So when we speak about lethal strikers, his name needs to come up as one of the greats. If this is your first time watching Batistuta or you didn't know that much about his career, leave a like if you've learned something new in today's lesson. Comment where you think he'd rank in today's era of strikers, and subscribe for new lessons on old ballers every Monday. Class dismissed.